go. But if he were to say, we're moving to Minnesota, I would be like,
no, we're
you've
not.
lost your mind.
Yeah. We had
Had
an outhouse. Yeah.
So where'd you go take a shower? Welcome to another episode of Message for Mom, where we're busting the myth that mothers-in-law aren't necessarily monsters-in-law. And I'm joined by my lovely co-host, my two daughters-in-law, and I have I was going to say Chelsea, but it's always Kelly. I don't know what happened here. Did we have Mercury retrograde yet? I don't know. So anyway, so Kelly is to my left.
Yes. Hi, I'm Kelly, and I'm married to Beth's oldest son, Alex.
And then I also sometimes I call them Chelsea. No,
Kelsey.
I say Kelsey, and then what is and Shelly?
Shelly. Yeah.
Like it's
So
have you ever heard me say those things?
We
The K
become
and the
one.
C.
I know it's just too funny. But anyway, so Chelsea is to my right.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I am married to Beth's middle son, Andrew.
All right. And before we get into today's episode, so I do want to kick it off. So we are introducing a monthly series that we're all pretty excited about. And so I will kick it off. Every month, you can guarantee that you will tune into a My First episode. So whether it's my first boyfriend, whether it's my first car, whether it's my first home, which we're actually going to talk about today, we have really some fun topics lined up. So, but before we get into today's episode, we are going to raise a glass because, ladies, we know that you don't have to be a blood relative to love your relative. So, cheers to another episode.
Cheers.
All right.
Take a sip.
Mm-hmm.
Can't miss that.
That's right. We can't miss that. So I am going to kick it off. So today is my first home, and Chelsea is a realtor. So I really thought we could maybe just find some statistics about people, like how old they are, the median age of a home buyer these days, because I think it's changed from when I purchased a home, and any other little tidbits that you have. So
yeah, it's definitely changed from when you purchased a home, probably. But
1980, so it was about 85, I think, when
you purchased
our first home. So what was the median age then?
So it looks like in around 1980 to 85, it was 29.
29. Okay.
Which actually 29, it seems
older than I would have
you would
thought.
think.
It really does.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess when you're taking in,
the aggregate, yes. Yeah. Because this is a median. So 29, but it's under 30.
It's under 30, which is significantly, I guess, actually a lot lower than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So according to NARS, National Association of Realtors, in 2022, the average age was 36.
36.
Wow.
Okay.
And that's jumped up from 2021 by 3 years. So it was 33.
Wow.
In 2021. Okay, before prices really
blew up, which is kind of crazy.
Through COVID.
Yeah.
That's I'm not surprised at that statistic at all, because homes have gotten so much more expensive.
I know.
I mean, I just even look back, like when my parents bought a home. I mean, when Mac and I first bought our home, it was in 1985. So I was actually 28 and he was 32. No, he was 34. So I guess we kind of fit into that.
Yeah, that mold.
Into that mold. But I'll never forget how high interest rates were.
Oh, yeah.
They were
What were they?
astronomical. They had been hovering around like 15%.
Oh, yeah.
And they had just taken a downward turn when we bought our first home, but there was such a backlog of people then refinancing. I mean, when we bought our first house, we couldn't close on our house for 4 months.
Oh my goodness.
It was there because there was such a backlog.
How much was your first house? Do you remember?
It was $90,000.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I feel like,
I know, right?
could you imagine though if interest rates were at 15% now, and then the home price? I mean,
I
it's
know.
like an $800,000
I know.
home or
Yeah, and I think that that's why, because sometimes you hear boomers we're not very sympathetic about the current environment because we're like, okay, when we bought our first home, it was 18% or something crazy.
but also at a $90,000
yes,
price point, which does make a difference.
it makes a huge
Yeah.
difference. But I was just even thinking back to like my parents' first home, and I think it was $30,000.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
And my dad was he was a Marine, so he qualified for whatever the special financing was for
Oh,
military,
like a VA.
a VA,
loan or-
right? And so I think he had like 2%, a 2% interest rate,
Yeah.
$30,000 house. So I just remember when Mac and I were buying our first one, we were feeling gypped out, just like you're feeling gypped out because we were like, hey,
Yeah.
I know.
my mom and dad was $30,000.
Wow.
But it's
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy
It is.
to see what's happened with
It's so
home
crazy.
prices. So Kelly, how old were you when you purchased your first home?
Well, I actually didn't. So my first home was a land purchase, and then we built the house ourselves.
Oh,
so we
wow.
didn't buy a home
Mhm.
necessarily. But I was 23,
23.
23.
24.
Wow.
When you built it, just the
Mhm.
two of you built it?
Yeah, we did.
Was this
Yeah.
in Alaska?
It was,
Okay.
yeah. So we bought a couple of acres of land
Mm-hmm.
way out in the middle of nowhere. At the time, it was a guy who was subdividing some land, and so he was creating the subdivision way out at the end of a road on a
Uh-huh.
bluff.
Uh-huh.
And we bought 2 acres, and then we bought a log cabin kit from a guy in town who had a bunch of land, and he would mill his own lumber or mill his own logs, basically.
Wow.
And you basically you
so it's
kind
a
of
kit, like a do-it-yourself kit?
it is
No,
yeah.
it is. Yeah, there's. I've
So
heard of.
it's like Lincoln Logs in the sense that like
Crazy.
we went and we met him and we sat down and we talked about like how big we wanted it and where we wanted windows to be and this and that.
Uh-huh.
So then he took that, created plans, and each plan was like one side of the log cabin.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a 12 by 12 cabin. It was very small.
Mm-hmm.
But each side was printed out on like an 11 by 17 sheet of paper with where we wanted the window put in, and each log was numbered.
Uh-huh.
And so then you basically follow this 11 by 17 printout.
Did you make it?
That's crazy.
You didn't build it.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, you built it.
Yeah, we built it. So the
I
guy,
thought you hired someone. You got the
No.
box and then you hired someone.
no. We bought the kit. The logs were all dropped off at our
Uh-huh.
cute little driveway that we made out of gravel.
Oh my gosh.
And then we hauled we'd compare the numbers to which side we were working on. We built the foundation. We
It's
did.
like an IKEA house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, although all the instructions were a lot easier to follow than IKEA instructions, actually. But we did have help with the roof because my husband at the time, I was married before, for those of you who don't know. And both of us were a little afraid of heights, and we had a 12-12 pitch roof, which is a very steep roof.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were a little nervous about that. So we did have a friend named Owen who came and helped us with some of the more scary roof stuff. But we actually did the entire thing from start to finish.
Well, what about
Wow.
plumbing and electricity?
We had electricity, and that was we actually installed the electric ourselves. The electric company had set up a box like some ways away from the house, and then we ran the lines that came up to the house, and we had outlets and things like that we installed. We did not have plumbing.
Oh, you didn't have plumbing.
We did not have running
I
water.
remember you talking about this.
Yeah, we had
You
an
had an outhouse?
outhouse. Yeah,
You had so where'd you go take a shower and a bath? Did you have an outdoor shower? Well,
we did.
yes, okay. How does this work here?
So in the summertime, so we had a camping shower, which is like they call them solar showers and things like this. So it's basically
Uh-huh.
a bag that I don't know fits like 4 or 5 gallons of water in it or something, and you hang it up outside, and the
Uh-huh.
sun. It's like a reflective material on the outside, or not reflective, but it's something that like the sun will warm up the water,
Right.
and you can use that. But it was like summers in Alaska, especially on this bluff, did not get hot enough to ever feel like it was nice taking a shower outside.
Right. Well, how
So-
about winter?
Well, yeah. So the thing in Alaska that, especially in rural areas, like Homer's a town of like 4,000 or 5,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not super rural like the bush or anything like that. But all the laundromats have showers, like private showers in them, and
Wow.
you pay to take showers. It's like a locker room essentially,
Right.
and it's private.
Right.
So every time we would go and do our laundry, we would take showers.
Okay.
So I did not shower every day back then.
Oh, know. But you weren't having your photo taken every day.
I
either.
wasn't. I wasn't.
That's very rustic.
It was
I
very
don't
rustic.
think I was aware of that. I
Yeah.
don't think I was aware that you did not have running
Yeah.
water. Well, how about dishes and things like that? How did
Okay,
you?
so what everyone does there, and this is what we did too, is those giant igloo water dispensers that you always see on the back of like construction trucks and things for
Yes.
all the guys to come and get their water.
Yes.
So we had a big one of those, and we had a sink with a drain, and the drain had a pipe that just went down into a bucket.
Okay.
Okay. So we would use that water for like drinking water and things like that. And it just sat on the sink, on the
Okay.
edge of the sink. And then I always had to boil water for washing dishes.
Uh-huh.
And we had a wood burning stove. So I would always just keep a pot of water on the wood burning stove. So it was always warm.
Well, I imagine your culinary skills were not quite as gourmet as they are today.
You know what? I will say though, actually, that, if you like seafood, living in Alaska is probably one of the best places, right? Because there's so much
The most
great
fresh.
seafood. So like we were always getting like the most beautiful salmon and crab and
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
halibut and things like that, and mussels and clams that we would go and dig up. And so, I mean,
Did you guys live by like a lake or a river? Or?
so we lived in Homer, which is right on, it's an inlet, basically,
Okay.
Cook Inlet. And so there are lakes, like there were lakes around like where we lived, but we lived up on a bluff. But there was a lake in town called Beluga Lake that would freeze over, and
Okay.
they would have car races on it when it froze
Okay.
over. But yeah, it was very rustic.
Very, very
My
rustic.
gosh.
Well, Chelsea, I think you have something somewhat similar when it's not your first home, but when you were younger. Didn't you live in a log cabin?
Yeah, we lived in a log cabin.
That's crazy. You guys have something very similar.
We did
It's
have
very rustic
Probably had
because
running water
we
there.
had
my
running water,
idea
yeah.
of
And we had
rustic
bathrooms inside.
Yeah.
is going to the Holiday Inn. So I just can't
Yeah.
even imagine this. This is like,
But we
I'm like,
definitely we
wah,
had
wah.
one bathroom. So it was just me, my mom, and my dad.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, it was fine. I was like 6 at the time, like
Right.
6 or 7. So
Right.
we just all shared the one bathroom that we had, but we did have running water
Mm-hmm.
and electricity. But I basically, because I mean, I guess when you imagine a log cabin, you walk inside, and I mean, I'm assuming that ours was probably a little bit bigger than y'all's was.
Probably. Probably.
But we had like a living room, and you walked inside, and the stairs were immediately to your right,
Mhm.
and the stairs went up, and that was basically my room, but it was
Mhm.
essentially like the attic space, or it was just like open attic space almost,
Kind of
'cause
a
it
loft or
like
something.
a loft,
Right.
yeah. And that's where my room was.
Mhm.
And then my parents' room were like, they had a room around the corner, and that was the only technically like bedroom
Mhm.
with the bathroom right outside,
Mhm.
a kitchen, and then like a dining space.
Okay.
And then we did have like a porch that kind of wrapped around.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But yeah.
The outside.
Yeah.
But we
Yes.
built it, like my dad had this very odd dream of like living in a log cabin. That's what, because we moved from Florida when I was like 4 or 5, and we lived in an apartment while they were building the house. We lived in an apartment in Kennesaw, and for whatever reason, he like thought Georgia meant living in a log cabin,
Yeah.
and so we lived in LJ
So that's what you did
in the woods
I like it.
Yes,
Yeah.
with your beagle.
with our beagle.
So that was when you were a child. So how old were you when you purchased your first home? And you did that actually. You and Andrew did that
Yeah.
before you were married.
So recently, I was 34, or not 34. Sorry, I'm 34 now. I'm like, how old am I?
Mhm.
I was 33.
Mhm.
So 33, and then Andrew was 34.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
like
close to what the median age is these days.
I think I had just turned 33 because it was like right after my birthday, or maybe I was
That's right.
32.
That's right.
But it was right around.
Right.
Yeah.
It was in August, September-ish.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So we kind of fit right into that
Uh-huh.
statistic of, the price point, or the age, and not the price point, but the age of
Right.
buying your first home.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So and I know we've already mentioned Chelsea is a realtor. So you were familiar with the ins and outs of negotiating and
Yeah.
putting a contract together and things like that. But did it have a whole different meaning because it was your home, your first home?
It was a
Or-
lot I mean, I found the transaction to be a lot more stressful than working with clients.
Mhm.
I guess because
You had a stake.
I
in it.
was like
Right.
involved in it more, like emotionally
Right.
tied to it. Whereas like with clients, I'm not emotionally tied to their transaction. So
Mhm.
if they come to me and they say, hey,
Mhm.
I don't want to buy this home, or, this happened and I want to back out of the contract. Okay, cool.
Right.
We'll write a termination. But I was tied to this more. And also, Andrew is very stressful when it comes to transactions like this. So my now husband, Beth's son, kind of stressed me out a little bit, but it all worked out great. And we actually, he's the one that found the house, which is crazy enough because, and everyone thinks that's so funny because they're like, oh, well, you're the real estate agent.
Yeah.
And yes, but I'm typically looking at houses for other people,
Right.
not myself.
Right.
And we knew that we were going to buy a house soon, but we probably weren't going to buy one for another like 6 to 7 months.
Mhm.
And this one kind of fell into Andrew just scrolls on Zillow like every night.
Mhm.
He still does that. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not like we're not moving anytime soon. And he'll just be over in bed scrolling on Zillow. So that's what he was doing. And he found the house and he sent it to me. And at first, we kind of looked at it. And it was when the market was still a little crazy. It was starting to slow down a little bit, but it was still kind of crazy. And I was like, oh, wow, this house is really cool because it's mid-century modern. It's really unique. It's on like an acre of land in Sandy Springs. And I thought for sure, I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, we're not going to be able to afford this. It's going to go for way over asking. They're going to have multiple offers. And about a week went by and it was still active. And I reached out to the agent and she was like, oh, we don't have any offers. And so we went and toured it. And
Yeah.
we like totally lowballed them and
meant to be.
Uh-huh.
they countered and it was a counter that we could actually do.
Yeah.
So did you know right away that that was your house? I mean, when you walked in, did you have
I was
like
pretty
a-
excited about it.
Yes.
Like I remember when we walked in, I was like, and I could tell Andrew was really excited about it too, because I feel like every room we went into, we were like, wow.
Yeah.
And like I could like imagine like just living there. And so, yeah, I was super excited about it. There were definitely some bumps in the transaction just because Andrew was like, well, I want this amount back in closing cost. And when we were negotiating and we got the inspection report back and we did get a decent amount back, but it wasn't exactly like the number that he wanted. And so there was a portion of time where I thought, oh God, he's going to,
We're gonna back out.
yeah, we're going to back out. And
He's just like his father. That was one of the things I had to learn with Mac. You had to hold things very, very loosely because he was a tough negotiator.
Yeah.
And he had told me early on in life, he's like, you have got to be prepared to walk away from anything. And I learned that lesson well because he really meant it. He really did.
No, literally.
Really
Andrew
really
got
did.
that
Yes.
from, I remember we were sitting at one of our favorite bars that we go to in Sandy Springs. And this was kind of when we were in the middle of negotiations. And I think we had finally come to an agreement, like, and I was like, thank God. And we sat down at the bar and we ordered a shot and we looked at each other and we were like, cheers.
Yeah.
We were like, all right, we're buying this house.
Yeah.
And I mean, it all worked out and I'm glad that it did.
Yeah.
But we did something that I don't think either of you guys have maybe ever done, or maybe you have, but because the market was a little crazier, but also because we had significantly come down on the actual price of the home, we let them stay in the house past after we purchased it.
Oh, did you lease it back to them? Okay.
So we did like a temporary occupancy or a lease back period. And we actually gave them the full, like, so typically with the temporary occupancy, it's 60 days is the max that you can give someone. Otherwise, it becomes like a whole rental leasing agreement and it's way more complicated. But we gave them the full 60 days, which was really weird because we bought the house and it was like a really exciting moment. Buying your first home.
Right.
And we literally like signed all the papers and then we were like,
Now we have to wait.
all right, I'll see you back at the townhouse.
Alex and I had that experience with the house that we bought in Athens. Not that we let the buyer stay there after, but we purchased the home while we were still living in California, knowing that we were moving to Georgia the following year.
Right.
So we did rent it out.
Right. And that was
Okay.
your first house with
with
AJ,
Alex.
right?
Mhm.
With Alex.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but you didn't see the house. You and AJ didn't even tour the house.
You did for
I
us.
know.
You
Oh,
and Mac.
really?
I know.
Okay.
Beth and Mac they got us on
Yeah.
FaceTime with our real
Uh-huh.
estate agent, and she
Yeah.
walked them through and they showed us everything. And we took
Uh-huh.
their word for it because
Mm-hmm.
we were like, okay, I mean, it looks good.
Yeah.
And I can clearly remember
Uh-huh.
Beth's like, she would turn the FaceTime towards her and she would say, I think the bones are really good.
Yes.
And then she'd turn the camera back around and
Yeah.
show us. And
What
stuff.
year
I
was
did.
this?
It
was-
was 2017, 2018.
2018. Okay.
2018, I think.
Yeah, it was
2018.
2018.
Okay.
Because then
Yeah.
we moved out
Nice.
here in
Yeah.
2019.
Mac was still alive.
Okay.
And yes, and then you moved
Yeah.
out in 2019.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we rented it
For a year.
for a year, yeah. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of weird.
They
It was like that
They were a little weird.
the
too.
deflation of buying a home from a
Yeah.
distance is like,
Yeah.
meh.
I
But we
know.
knew that I was fine. I was fine with it because I'm like, we're so far away anyway. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, those renters were weird and they had
They were
cats.
really weird.
And it was
They had
just,
cats,
oh
though.
my
We had to
gosh.
go over one time. I can't remember what it was.
Well, we
but-
came out here in like during the summertime
to look
to
at
talk
for the
about
renovation.
renovations.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
they were not happy with us. I'm like, look,
Mhm.
you're renting this house and you're moving out in like a
Right.
month. So,
So when you first actually walked through the house, what did you think? Because I mean, it did need a lot of work.
Oh my gosh.
And that's why I kept saying it has good bones because you
Yeah.
really have to. And I'm one of those people. I would be your dream client as a realtor because I
You
can
can see the
walk into
potential.
I can see the potential. Most
Yeah.
people can't. Like 99% of the people cannot.
Oh, 100%.
They have to have it staged beautifully, but I can walk into any kind of a house and be like, oh, this is
People
good.
would
and this is
literally-
good, and
yeah.
yes,
They would rather pay
So,
more than
they would. They-
100%.
it's really hard. And so I do know I'm a little bit unique that way, but it did need a lot of work. So
Yeah.
when you first saw the house, what were you thinking? Did you think, oh gosh, Beth and Mac?
no, not at all.
They screwed us over.
Not at all.
They done did us wrong.
No, not at all. Because Alex and I had talked about before buying the house, we had talked about like what we wanted out of a house. And I said, I would rather pay less for a house that needs a lot more work so I can customize it to what I want it to be rather than buying a
Yeah.
house that's like ready to just
Right. Yes.
go. Because then this way I can, I can customize it. I can put in the appliances that I want. I can rearrange the structure of something how I want, which is what we ended up doing. So we bought our house is small.
Mhm.
We bought a small house for a lower amount of money, and we were able then to put that savings into the renovations
Mhm.
Mhm.
and really customize it. And
Mhm.
it has made the house really feel like ours.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like this is we put not only blood, sweat, and tears, but also like vision and,
Mhm.
aesthetic
Yeah.
into the bones of the house, the new bones,
Right.
on top of the old bones.
Right. Yeah.
That's
But,
how I would rather
yeah.
like when we
Yeah.
bought our house,
Yes.
that's kind of the same because they had renovated the kitchen and then the 2 bathrooms downstairs, so like the guest bathroom downstairs and the half bathroom,
Mhm.
and then they painted. So we actually found pictures of what the house looked like when they bought it
Mhm.
recently, and everything, all of the white or like, I mean, basically our whole house is white because
Mhm.
you guys have been in it.
I know.
All of that was
We need to be doing
like
all
wood.
of my YouTube videos at your house, all the reels at your.
If we have we have good
It's like,
lighting.
why do you not live closer? I have the perfect house.
But they painted and they painted the outside and then they basically renovated the kitchen and the 2 bathrooms, but everything else is pretty much the same from when they bought it.
Mhm.
So very livable, but I really there's so many things that we want to do to the house
Mhm.
still, and I really like that part
Mhm.
about it, which
Right.
I agree with you. I think there's so many people that just want to move into like an already
Yes.
pre-done house, which I think is totally fine. And I have a lot of clients like that. And some people, they just want it done and they like a certain style and they're fine with it.
hmm
But I'm more like you where I want to do it how I want to do it.
Yeah.
Like I don't really, when I renovate like our master bathroom, like, yes, am I thinking about resale value? Yes. But also I want it to be the aesthetic that I want it to be.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I'm not really like thinking, oh, well, if I do it like this, am I going to get $10,000 less
Right.
because,
Mhm.
someone's not
Yeah.
going to like it.
hmm
Well, we had to really commit to that when we renovated our house because we've essentially, with the renovations that we've done, we've kind of priced ourselves out of our neighborhood
Yeah.
at this point. So, but that was we were willing to take that that risk or that situation on because I think he and I both felt like this is a forever home.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so that was an okay,
Yeah.
chunk to bite off
Right.
for us.
Right. Because one thing I do know is a house really should be a home. And that's why we actually, kicked it off. It was our first home because I think there's a big difference between a house and a home. And a home really is, and I've always felt very strongly about this. And I think the boys have picked up on this. And I think you both are perfect examples of it too. But it's your sanctuary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's where you come and you regroup and you can just, take a moment, and it's a refuge. It really is. And so I do like the fact that you can customize your home to how you like it.
Yeah.
And what's important to you.
Right.
And as far as aesthetics too, because I think that's also very important too. And it's always interesting. Actually, so I just dated this guy, and I can remember walking into his house, and it was just like, and he was very successful.
Yeah.
But it was so dated. It was just like, what? I mean, it's like you're stuck in a time warp from the 1980s.
Yeah.
It's like, and I've always had that thought in my mind. It's like, how do people really get stuck in their homes? How is that not evolving and growing with them?
Right.
I mean, you don't have to be doing major renovations every single year, but just like little small tweaks.
Sure.
I'm always, I don't know, you guys know me. I'm always like doing something to my home because it's my home.
Yeah.
It happens way more than not, I think, because sometimes I'll go door knocking or, just to generate like leads and lead sources. And it's kind of crazy when I've had people open their doors, and it'll be a neighborhood that was maybe built in like the late 70s or the 80s. And some people have actually done stuff to their house, but some people have literally been there since like they were the first owner of the home, and they'll open the door. And I mean, it's like as soon as they open the door, I mean, it smells like the 70s.
Yeah.
And you're like,
right?
And you can see like the old wallpaper in the back.
Yes.
And like the carpet. And it's just wild. I'm like, how
It
are
is.
you living here?
I know.
I'm like, also, this seems like a health hazard.
Well, and that's what I mean. And one of the things too, we can talk about this, but I will share my first home. Before we really take a deep dive. But home maintenance is half of the battle of purchasing your first home or any home.
It really is.
Home maintenance. And I always pick out one project indoors and one project outdoors I do every year because you really do have to stay on top of.
It gets pricey, but I mean,
it does. But in the long run, you have a very functioning home, and you're not going to be faced with this huge project at a certain point.
For sure.
Just because you're paying attention to the maintenance. But I will go back. So my first home, so I was 28, AJ was 2, and we moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we had been living in Oklahoma before that.
Okay.
And as I said, the interest rates had just come down, so the housing market was absolutely insane. It was just crazy. So living in Oklahoma, I mean, I had to fly in. It was a whole weekend where we went house hunting, and so just house after house after house. And I can remember my realtor; they were taking us to all the newer homes, the new subdivisions, because we were a young family, and that kind of made sense. And at a certain point, I just had to look at them. I'm like, none of these houses are driving with me. Because I'm an old soul at heart.
Like
so
charm.
I like charming homes.
Yeah.
So then then the light bulb went out, and he's like, okay. So he took us, it was an area, Minneapolis has, it's the state of 10,000 lakes. So there are quite a few lakes even in the city. So he took us over to Lake Nokomis because that was in our price range. And there were several homes over there. And as soon as we went into the home that we purchased, I just knew.
Was that the Rochester home, or this was?
No, this is in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
I can share some photos with you. It was just a really cute. They call it a story and a half.
Okay.
And so looking like a little, Tudor story and a half.
Yeah.
Just super cute. And we had a screen porch and back, and it was a corner lot, which we didn't really think that through because in Minneapolis you have to take care of the sidewalks on,
We had 2.
So we had 2. So we had front and, but then that was like, so back was like, I guess we'll buy a snowblower, and So anyway, so we did that,
Yeah.
but it was a cute little picket fence because we had 2 English sheepdogs. AJ was 2. So there were 2 bedrooms on the main floor, 1 bath, and then kitchen, living room, dining room, and then upstairs. So we've basically kind of finished that off into our master bedroom, although there wasn't the bathroom up there. We just had
One bathroom.
one bathroom.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Although down in the basement, there was a toilet down the basement
Yeah.
where
Convenient.
the washer and dryer
okay, in case you need to.
were.
Why do they do
Emergency toilet in the basement.
Emergency toilet, I guess it was. Because we did have a cute little.
Well, wait, they don't have weather you would need to like sequester yourself in the basement in
Oh.
Minneapolis,
No.
do they?
that? No.
No.
Because I was going to say, in St. Louis, this sounds actually like
That
a
makes
smart
sense.
idea, putting a toilet in the basement, because all the tornado warnings.
Yeah, that's true.
Into the
Well,
basement. you need
there
to-
were tornadoes there, but
So why did you guys move to Minnesota?
so
Like,
Mac
of all
had a job promotion.
Okay.
So he became actually he was a resident manager in where we were. We were just there. We were sent to Oklahoma. It was a very temporary. Mac was just sent to open it up, and then afterwards, this really great property came available. So it was a big takeover. He had so much fun. The whole staff was great. But anyway,
Yeah.
he was a resident manager.
Were you nervous about? I feel like if Andrew were to tell me tomorrow, I mean, obviously I would go, but
Mhm.
if he were to say we're moving to Minnesota, I would be like,
No, we're
you've
not.
lost your mind.
Yeah,
No.
Because I'm from the South, and so I
Mhm.
just
that would be a
cannot-
huge change.
It would be such a.
Yeah.
I don't think I would leave my house in the winter. We've talked about this before,
Yes,
but
I know.
yeah.
It is a big challenge, but I had grown up in the Midwest,
you were kind of used
So-
to it a little bit.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Maybe not quite the harsh winters that Minneapolis
yeah.
has or had back then. I think things are changing as the climate changes a little bit, but back then they were pretty
yeah.
harsh, pretty long and pretty harsh.
Iowa, Nebraska. I mean, those are
Mhm.
cold. Those
They're
are
cold.
cold winters. Like that's
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And we'd already moved to Texas and then we'd moved to Oklahoma.
Okay.
So we already had 2 moves under our belt.
Yeah.
And we'd only been married like 3 years. So I kind of knew that this is what my
Yeah.
life was going to be like. But
Yeah.
what a cute little house. And so I went in and did everything myself. I wish Mac were alive, because many times people have asked me through the years, do I believe in divorce? And I'm like, no, not divorce. Murder? Yes. Divorce? No. And the first time that thought came through my mind is because we wallpapered.
Oh no.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
do not wallpaper with your spouse, whoever's listening to this. But yes, I had been manning all of the renos all by myself, but he, for whatever reason, he decided to
Wanted to step
volunteer
in.
for wallpapering. And I am telling you, I wanted to kill that man. It was like, okay, no, I will not divorce you. I will kill you. And and it was just
And
like,
I'll just wallpaper you right into the wall.
That's right. So after that, it was just like, okay. He was like, okay, I'm leaving everything to you. And he was
Oh
trying to
my
help, but it
gosh.
was just
Yeah.
like our personalities were just
Yeah.
how to attack a project were completely different. And I will say this, I had wallpapered our bedroom. That was my first experience. So I had at least one
Oh, you had some
wallpaper
experience.
project
yeah.
to my name, and he had 0. So I'm like, okay, buddy.
It sounds like Andrew. Andrew's very like he's very quick to do things,
Uh-huh.
quicker than I am.
Uh-huh.
So like
Yes.
it's like go, 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 go. Let's get everything done.
Yeah.
Which I do like that quality about him. However, there are certain things that drive me crazy,
Mhm.
like laundry.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put the laundry in.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be done. It'll maybe be done for like 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then he will put it in the dryer.
Mhm.
There are certain things that you cannot dry.
Oh yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's the same with like
Mhm.
house projects, which I'm
Yeah.
like, I appreciate sometimes, but sometimes I'm like, you're
Mhm.
not doing it correctly. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
let's
Right.
do
Alex
it
and I
sometime.
have gotten to the point where I'm just like, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that you have your way to do it.
Uh-huh.
I have my way to do it.
That's right.
Let's
Yeah.
just do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because
so
that's
you
the
go
correct
on and
way.
you go work on the front yard.
Yeah. You're like, my way's correct.
I'll put together all the
My
all the
way is
things.
correct.
Exactly. Well, you get
Reminds
something
me.
in your brain and you just
Right.
can't,
I know.
So it's just easier than to divide and conquer rather than try to butt
Right.
heads and do the
Yeah.
same
I
thing,
know.
right?
Yeah. There was a cute song in a musical years ago. I think it was Bye Bye Birdie. And it's like about men. Men, what's the matter with men today?
oh yeah.
Why can't they be like we are, perfect in every way? Because it always comes back to that. It's like, my way is better.
Honestly, nothing changes.
Nothing
really.
changes.
It's really the same.
But he's gotten better now. He'll be like, do you want me to put your clothes in the dryer, and I'm
No,
like,
no,
no,
thank
when
you.
have I ever wanted you to do that? I'm
That's
like,
right.
stop asking.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I wanted to
Oh.
actually, so that's your first house, but since you
Mhm.
and Mac moved around so much, like you
Mhm.
clearly weren't buying homes in every country that you moved to when he
No.
was transferred overseas. So, like,
No.
how did you? I know you had a home that you had in the States while you were gone for much of the time, but like, how did all of that?
Mhm.
How did you get to that point, and when did you decide, like, was it like with the first overseas thing where you're like, well, we should have a house in the States that we can come back to? Or like, how did all of that evolve? And then how did you deal with the house out while you were
Mhm.
out of the country
I
for
know.
years at a time?
It got to be a little bit challenging, but we actually, when we first moved to Guam, we actually leased our house. We rented our
Oh,
house.
okay. Okay.
We
So
did.
did you have a property management company
Mhm.
deal?
So we
Okay.
hired a property management company, and so they stepped in. So they took care of everything, and then they would run everything by us. And I can't even remember what it was. Mac had sent me home to like check things out,
Mhm.
and so we made an appointment to go tour the house and take a look at the renters. And I came out of that meeting, that little tour, and I can remember calling Mac and saying, okay, we are not renting this house out anymore.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it was really horrible. It was just not that they were, I mean, I don't know. They just weren't taking care. It was a beautiful home.
It's
We
a
had a
heartbreaking
really
thing, right?
beautiful home. It was a mid-century modern. It was
Yeah.
like a Frank Lloyd Wright house, just a beautiful home in Rochester, Minnesota. And they just were not taking care of it
Mhm.
how I wanted them to take care of it. So anyway, so we switched gears. So this was about 3 years. I think we rented it out for like 3 years.
Wow.
Mhm.
So we took it back, so that was a whole process. They had to, finish their lease out. We took it back. And then because there had been some damage done
Mhm.
to it, so then it was like, then we were like, okay, Beth, you go home, every year, like a month ahead of time, and then start.
Okay.
So I had like a little rental project every year.
Mhm.
Wow.
So for the rest of the time that we were overseas.
Yeah.
So we were living in Guam. So then we were in Vietnam and then Shanghai.
And you still had the Rochester house that whole
Mhm.
time.
Then we had the Rochester house. Yes. And so then it kind of made it easy because my mom was living in Minneapolis. And so the boys and I would come home and we would go to the Rochester house. And then Mac would, come home for a few
Mhm.
weeks.
Yeah.
And, so we had like a home base because before we would always go home and visit my mom for like 6 weeks
Right.
at a time,
I
which
guess
I
that's
think was,
a lot.
I think it was like a lot for my mom
Yeah.
with 3 boys.
I'm
It was a little
sure.
crazy. So that really kind of gave us,
Yeah.
So
really some
renting it, I
freedom.
mean, in that sense, like renting it is like the opposite of helping you out because
Mhm.
anytime you needed to come back and have it available to you.
Mhm.
So did you like cover all the furniture with sheets and things like when you were gone? Like how did you care for?
So my grandparents do this for their
Uh-huh.
house up in Beach Mountain,
Mhm.
and which me and my mom think is wild because they're like, I thought, oh, well, maybe it's to eliminate dust.
Uh-huh.
My papa's reasoning was, oh no, it's to hide everything so that, and I'm
Oh.
like, this literally tells people that you're not there.
Yeah.
I'm like, that does the opposite. They're like, oh, sheets. Oh, they're not here for a long time. Let me
Right.
break in.
Yeah.
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 I don't know. That's my thought process.
That's so funny that he said that. I always assume dust.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
what I
which
thought
that
so
makes
too.
sense.
Yeah.
Dust.
I think that's
Yeah.
probably why most people,
Yeah.
your papa might be a little paranoid.
That is
Anyway,
pretty
sorry.
funny. That's okay. That's totally fine. So when we took the house back, we like slowly put furniture back in because we
Oh.
didn't have any furniture.
Right.
But because when we moved overseas, we basically had sold everything
Yeah.
and moved overseas because we had so many friends that had lived overseas for years, and they're like, listen, if we learned anything, it was like, don't put everything into storage because you'll come back home, you won't like that furniture anymore.
Tastes have changed.
Everything is, yes,
Yeah.
everything has changed. So just do yourself a favor and sell everything. So we did take that advice and we did. So when we came back and took the house back, then it was just like, kind of like room by room,
Mhm.
redoing it and then putting the furniture back in. And then I did hire somebody that was like a little handyman. And so then he would check on the house when we were
Mhm.
overseas. So we did have
That's
somebody,
nice.
yes,
Yeah.
that was checking
Nice.
on
To
it.
look
and-
in on things.
Mhm, and giving us an update and,
Mhm.
and all of that. And our neighbors knew too, because they were just,
Mhm.
we lived on a private street. So there were just 5 homes there.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
everybody was really watching out for us, which was, and
Yeah.
they were actually happy to see the renters go too. So
Oh, I'm sure.
that probably horrified them. It really did.
I
but
feel like renters become more problematic than
they can be.
that's why my grandparents, like I said, they have a house in Beach Mountain, and then they do half the year there, and then they spend half the year in Florida. But they have never rented their house out like short term or anything,
Yeah.
because they used to do that back in the 80s.
Mhm.
When they had a different house up there, and the renters just completely destroyed the place, that
Yeah.
they were like, we're not doing this anymore.
And
Now I think rental companies and property management companies have gotten a lot better.
Maybe not. I don't know. Like
But, I mean, you guys do short-term rental, so
Mhm.
well, that's
I don't know
different
if-
though, because I think, okay, we do run into a lot of issues with
Yeah.
the renters at the Tybee house. So we have the Tybee house. So Alex and I made an investment in a vacation rental home. But the thing I think about the Tybee house that squares my heart is that that's not our forever home, and that's
Mhm.
not the place that we hope to end up, at
Really?
the end of things. Yeah, like if it were, and if I were expecting like this is the house that we're going to retire in,
Yeah.
either it would need to be completely renovated before we did that.
Right.
yeah.
Or B, I wouldn't have the heart to rent it, because it is really hard to see people not treating
Mhm.
your place
Mhm.
very well at
Yeah.
all. And so with the volume that we have going in and out of that house, I had to divorce myself very quickly from having any kind of like
Connection or type
connect,
to
like,
it.
yeah, like, heartfelt connection to it. Like I love that house and I love the location.
Mhm.
And even if we do end up retiring there in that house, it will be redone
Right.
to something
Yeah.
different.
Specifications.
Right.
Yes.
But I really, and that was another one that he closed on that. Alex closed on that house and I had never seen it. And then you and I
yeah,
took the trip to go see it for the
You're
first
very
time.
trusting.
we did. We went to Savannah.
Well, Alex, like
It
Mac
was
and
so hot.
like Andrew, I'm guessing is very
It's very
good at negotiating and is willing to walk away.
Mhm.
So I actually had to kind of keep myself from getting too excited
Attached.
about that house from the get-go, because he
Yeah.
was like, we are about to walk away from this thing, because we did
Yeah.
go through some tough negotiations with
Mhm.
the previous owner of that house. And so yeah, I had to be like, oh, beach house, and then be prepared to walk away from it.
Yeah.
And I was, and I think from that point on, I just really made it like, do not get attached to this house.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
you cannot do that.
Mhm.
So but
it
yeah,
all worked out.
it all worked
It all
out,
worked
and
out.
it's a great place, and we all love to
We
go
all
there.
love it.
And
We all love it.
so,
Yes.
it's
a
wall
great,
stuffs aside.
It is a really great rental house, but I've actually, so I've dated two gentlemen and they each have lake homes. I think one had a beach home, but anyway, but they don't rent theirs out. And it's because like just things like they're thinking like bed bugs, or they're thinking
Oh.
like, like all these,
God, thanks for bringing that
I
up. I
think-
never thought about bed bugs before.
or, all the things that can go wrong.
yeah.
So for them personally to go to their home, and
Yeah.
just like you said, you brought up a really valid point. You have to divorce yourself if you are going to rent your house out,
Yeah.
and that's why it was so heartbreaking for me to come back to the Rochester
Oh,
house.
yeah,
'Cause you were
because
so-
that was my. I mean, I'd actually
your
lived there.
house,
That
yeah.
was such a beautiful home, and to see people not take care of it, that is very hard to
Yeah,
wrap your head around. But
That's yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do that.
but when you go into it and you're just like, this is this is a rental property, and you've divorced yourself
Yeah.
from the fact that it is yours, but it's also loosely yours.
Yeah.
That is a good
Mhm.
mindset to have,
It
because
is.
I think like my grandparents, for instance, they are very attached to the Beach Mountain house.
Yeah,
Now I think like me and my mom are also attached to that house in a certain way, but I think if we were ever to take over ownership of that property, we would be able to and more willing to probably do like a short-term rental.
Right.
Because we're not, but I think too, it's the belongings that you have in the house and all of that. Like
Right.
everything is very meaningful that they have there now.
hmm
If we were to ever do that, we would
Mhm.
completely remove everything and like
Oh, yeah, of
replace it with like
Right.
different
Yes.
furniture, different
You have
lamps,
to.
like all of that stuff.
yeah,
You have
Um,
you have to make it comfortable for a rental,
Yeah.
a short-term rental
Yeah.
property, but yet, I mean, and because we do all go there and we all love the Tybee house.
Yeah.
So it's a very comfortable house. I mean,
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
my room. Everybody knows
Yeah.
which room is mine, and nobody,
yeah.
and you and Andrew are always sweet. I've offered it to you a couple of times. You're like, and Andrew's always like, no, we're fine,
It's your
Mom.
room."
We're fine.
Well, the nice thing about the vacation rental type situation is that we do have company taking care of
Yes.
it, right? So they handle the turnovers and all the things, but they also handle like we still buy the furniture, although we buy it at cost,
Mhm.
sort of,
Yeah.
kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, things.
Kind of, sort
So
of.
it's not really our furniture, even though we bought it. But it does take the sort of like
The pressure.
the
off.
Yeah.
pressure off and the feelings of
It does.
ownership off.
Yes.
Like when you see it is your house, yes, you
Yes.
own it, but when you see it filled with like almost like stage
Right.
furniture, it's kind of like it's not real. I mean, this
Yeah.
isn't really what I would do,
Yeah.
Right.
but it's
Like
comfortable
if
for.
that gets scratched,
But it
it's
is.
like
It's
fine.
comfortable.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah.
And we
love
replace
it.
things as they need and
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's
It's a great house.
it is a
It's
great
really
house. I think it's just funny though,
4
like
bedrooms, 4 baths. You
Mhm.
have the big wraparound porch on the main floor, and
has a
then the
pool,
pool. I know the pool. We all
big
love
backyard with a pool and a
That's
patio.
big.
Location
Yeah,
you
that-
can't beat.
You really can't. And then all the great restaurants we can walk to.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
The north side of
Pretty
Tybee
nice.
Island is quieter for anybody who wants to go and take a vacation on Tybee Island.
Mhm.
Stay on the north side. It's
Mhm.
quieter.
Mhm.
It's more neighborhoody. It's
Right.
just it's a really relaxing place to go.
Mhm. It is.
But I will
sure.
say, like, just going back in terms of home ownership,
Mhm.
as far as like forever home, home for now, or rental property, like
Mhm.
I think there's something very like you get so heart attached to your home,
You do.
and almost like I mean it's even you build a life there with your spouse, with your family, with your kids. You have your family come over, you have events there, you have
Yes.
you put your own stamp on it.
Mhm.
And so I just kind of wanted to ask, maybe as we're sort of starting to wrap it up
Mhm.
here, like of all the homes that you've ever, even
Mhm.
not that you've owned even,
Mhm.
but any home that you've ever lived in,
Mhm.
like what has been your favorite, just like where you go into that space and you just feel like
Mhm.
this is where I'm supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. And I will just bring up again, and that's the difference between a house and a home,
Mhm.
because houses can turn into homes.
Yeah.
They really can. And I do have to say, I really have a special place in my heart for my house here in Athens,
Yeah.
because a lot has happened. Actually, AJ and I were just recently out to dinner, and he's like, "Well, where do you?" I mean, I think I've lived in like, oh gosh, maybe 20 different places. And this is so funny because I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. I moved there when I was 5, and I didn't leave until I went away to university. I
Wow.
mean, I was that generation
And then
where
you lived everywhere.
and then I lived well, I married Mac, then I lived everywhere. But there are 2 homes that really have a special place, and one is Athens, and so AJ was like, "Well, why?" And I'm like, "Well, because I grew up here." And he just kind of looked at me because I know,
You
I know,
didn't.
right? But I did
But
grow
you
up
did,
here
actually.
in a way, is because very many momentous things have happened. I mean, when I moved here with Mac,
Mhm.
we were married, and this was going to be our forever place. And then lo and behold, he was diagnosed with cancer just a couple of years after we moved here. But then in the meantime, Saka, still at a certain age, was really, taking off and getting its legs. It had turned into a business. So that was very exciting.
Mhm.
And then also just the big change from me, being a married woman for 35 years, then transitioning to being a widow,
Yeah.
single, and then doing everything on my own. So I've been in the house now all by myself for 5 years. And so that's why I say I kind of
Yeah.
grew up here,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because my life went in a new
Yeah.
trajectory. And also, I've been so blessed when Mac and I moved here. I never in a million years dreamed that I would have any of my children living close by. And now I have all 3.
Yeah. It's
And then
amazing.
and now everyone's married. So now not only do I have my sons that are here, but I have 3 beautiful daughters-in-law, 2 that are launching this podcast with me. So many things have changed. And so,
Yeah.
yes, so this is really kind of where I grew up
Yeah.
Yeah.
again.
I
For
like
sure.
that.
Mhm. So this home really has a very special place in my heart. And there again, every year I come up with a project. So some are unexpected, like the kitchen last year, that just kind of snowballed. I didn't do like a
Yeah.
complete renovation, but it snowballed because I needed a new refrigerator. So it's like, well, if I need a new refrigerator, I need a new stove. Oh, the stove needs to match with the dishwasher. And then it just like snowballs. So anyway, I really love this space now. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
but every year I've done something. I've added carpet. I put in hardwood floors. I've renovated the bathroom. I have a closet now that used to be a
Yeah.
bedroom. I have a YouTube studio. I mean, it's been actually
Yeah.
quite extensive. And I've done all those projects. I've taken all of those on all by myself.
Yeah.
So there again, just
For sure.
growing up a little bit. So
Yeah.
this house is very, very special to me. And also too, because Mac was here at
Yeah.
the beginning too.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's a cute neighborhood, cute house. And I think the boys would agree with me when I say the Rochester house. So our Rochester, Minnesota home was absolutely not only beautiful, but it was very special to
Yeah.
all of us in so
Yeah.
many ways. And we had that home for quite a number of years. And I can remember when we sold the home and the boys were a little taken aback, but I mean, everybody's
Yeah.
just basically like crying. They're like, no, we grew up there.
Heartbroken
They
outright,
were.
yeah.
They-
You get emotional.
Mhm. Yes. So I have two homes that were very, very special to me.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Chelsea?
I think mine would be the home that we live in now. I mean, none of these things, like all the renovations and children, haven't happened yet, but I can
Mhm.
imagine it in the future.
That's what's exciting. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is exciting. I can't really like pinpoint down like maybe if I were to pinpoint down maybe like a childhood home, it would be our home in Canton, Georgia, in Bridgemill, because I maybe lived there the longest
Mm-hmm.
out of all locations. But like I also don't necessarily have a special connection to that. But I will say this was kind of cool. I had a showing. I sold a house in Bridgemill last year.
Mhm.
Did you go by and see?
I
the-
did.
Oh,
I
that's
went
cool.
by, because it was like on the way, and I drove by the lot, and the guy that owned the house was actually mowing the lawn.
Mhm.
And I stopped my car and I rolled down the window, and he was like, "Hey, can I help you?" And I was like, "Actually," I was like, "I used to live in this house." And he was actually the person that bought it from my mom
Oh, wow.
when she sold it
Oh,
That's
back
so cool
in
that they still live there.
2007,
crazy.
because she
Yeah.
sold it in 07.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, "Yeah, I think we bought it in 07." I was like, "Yeah, you bought it from my mom." And
Uh-huh.
he was like, "Yeah, I don't know who lived in that room up there." I was like, "That was actually my bedroom." So that was kind of
Aw.
cool.
Yeah.
But
That was actually Andrew had the opportunity to do that with our Rochester house.
oh, really?
Ask him about that. So I think he was visiting a friend, and so then he just on the fly decided to drive up to the house, and he knocked on the door, and sure enough, one of the boys, because the family that purchased it from us also had 3 boys.
Yeah.
which
Oh, wow.
that was interesting. So anyway, so he
It's so interesting. I
and-
feel like homes definitely,
Yes.
like I feel like even our home now, and I don't know if I love homes with character and charm,
Mhm.
which is why I would much prefer to live in a home that's been lived in rather than
yes,
a home that's brand new personally.
Yes.
Because I feel like when I sit there, I think, wow, this home's been here since 77. And
Mhm.
I'm like, how many lives have been lived in
Mhm.
this home, and what's
Mhm.
happened in this home, like so many life events, like not that are mine,
Yeah.
but like other people's. And I feel like you can feel it, like the
Yeah.
character, you can like feel the
Mhm.
energy.
It's really cool.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
what about you?
Well, so definitely the house that Alex and I have now, because it is just so exactly, what we wanted, but with
Tailor-made.
tailor-made, but still room left to grow and enhance our, whether it's the backyard, the front yard, or just changing things around inside the home. So definitely this house.
Mhm.
And then I have to say the house that I had in St. Louis, and kind of for the reasons that you're just talking about, it's the oldest home that I ever owned. It was built in the 30s.
Oh, wow.
So it was just this beautiful brick home, small house,
Mhm.
only one bathroom,
Mhm.
but with a basement.
Mhm.
No toilet in the basement, though.
Mhm.
But it was just this beautiful kind of Tudor style. They call them gingerbread houses in
Mhm.
St. Louis,
Mhm.
but kind of the similar style in a cute old working class neighborhood in the city of St. Louis. And you could just sit in that house and feel the history of it.
Mhm.
It had stained glass windows, and it was all like the people that built it, they built it for themselves. Like it wasn't a spec home or, anything like that.
Mhm.
And one of the coolest things, and I'll just share this detail really quickly, a lot of these brick homes in St. Louis built at this time period, they don't have insulation.
Mm.
It's 2 layers of brick with air in between.
Oh,
wow.
So there's like an inner house that's brick and an outer house, like the
Oh,
exterior
wow.
of the house
very
that's brick.
substantial.
So
Yeah.
substantial. Like I felt so strong in
I
that
was gonna
house.
say,
I was
very
never worried.
secure.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
such a cool, like old building detail that I think we've just lost touch with when
Right.
we build all these new homes now, especially, in neighborhoods that are just popping up all over the
Yeah.
place. And it's just all these kind of
Mhm.
manufactured fake materials. Like,
Yeah.
so
That sounds like our first house in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
'Cause it really was a little gingerbread, as I said, story and a half,
Yeah.
Tudor, so cute.
yeah.
And I believe it was built in the 30s as well.
You just feel
lot
the
of charm.
history of- Yeah,
Mhm.
so
Well,
charming
The
and so
hardwood
adorable.
floors and the
We can
beautiful
all agree that we love a
windows
good,
and-
charming,
We do.
old house.
I
Historical
think we
house.
do.
I do love historical homes.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Do we want to cover with our or any other statistics for? I mean, we just talked about first-time homeowners, how the age has changed quite a bit.
We can wrap it up with the last statistic of the average amount of times that people move. If we
Oh
want.
yeah, let's do that. So what is
Okay.
it?
So it's 11.7 according.
Really?
Who is this according to? Actually,
11.7 times.
doesn't tell me who. Oh, according to Steinway Moving and
Okay.
Storage.
Okay. Okay, Steinway Moving and Storage.
I'm not sure that they're a
Thank
trustworthy,
you.
whoever that is, but it's
trustworthy
the,
source.
it's the
Thank
first
you.
thing that came up when I googled. However, I counted how many,
11.7.
but that's in a lifetime, and I've
Okay.
moved 12
Okay.
times.
12 times?
But I
So you're-
obviously am not finished with my
You're
Your
very
life.
average right
life.
now.
Hopefully,
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
average now.
Right now.
You were like 20, you said, which is
I'm-
way more.
It could be a little bit less. I think the boys counted up that we moved like 14 times. So, and then after we came back to the States, then we moved from Rochester, Minneapolis to San Francisco, and then here. So I'd add on 3 more. So that would be like 17. And then I guess when I was a child, I mean, I had my childhood home, and then we moved when I was like in middle school, just one time,
Yeah.
the
So you're definitely way above
Uh-huh.
average for sure.
Definitely.
Well, hopefully hopefully moving to Athens and Georgia just in and of itself is my last move. Like I know Alex and I will probably retire to someplace like Tybee. So I know that this home in Athens won't be my last,
Mhm.
though it's hopefully second to last.
Uh-huh.
And that will make the total of my moves, not counting all the times I moved to different neighborhoods in San Francisco, probably around 11, 12 times.
Okay.
Okay. So,
So-
you're right about there.
Like those are big moves. Yeah. If
Yeah.
I counted all the apartments that I lived in San Francisco, I'd be
Yeah.
in the 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
same city.
Yeah, that
Doesn't
that's
count
kinda
so
crazy. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, well then, ladies, that wraps up another episode of Message from Mom. And as I introduced at the beginning of this episode, we will have a first episode every month. And so I think next month we are going to be talking about our first boyfriends.
Oh, gosh.
So
Stay tuned.
juicy.
All right, ladies. Thanks so much. And again, we are busting the myth that mothers-in-law aren't necessarily monsters-in-law.